So, courts reviving blasphemy laws after convicting a man who burned the Quran. Moussa Kadri threatened to kill Hamit Coskun with a bread knife. I note, however, that you are now 59 and someone of hitherto exemplary character. I have pretty good friends, right? Now, none of them would see a rando on the street burning a book, run into their house, take out a knife, and tell them they're going to kill them, and then proceed to attack them. Apparently, it is worse in Britain to burn a book, a religious book, Book of Islam, than getting mad about it and attacking the person who burns the book with a knife. That's the kind of two-tier Britain we're living in right now. For people not in the UK, you know, I've never seen the rest of the world so tuned up into what's happening in Britain in my whole life. Normally, Americans are very focused on America, and the rest of the West is very focused on America too, because things come downstream of there. And so much of our movies and TV shows are in America. So I often find Americans just aren't really that interested in the UK. But lately, I find a lot, this is partly because of social media and Twitter and stuff, but a lot more Americans, and I'm not just talking about Elon Musk and JD Vance and stuff, but just normies online are concerned about free speech and free expression in this country. They heard all about the rape gangs and lots of other issues, people being put in jail for tweets. And in a way, it's heartening for me to see our friends across the pond and other countries caring about our freedom, because they know that we historically have been the leaders in the rule of law and freedom. But this case is just insane, right? So first of all, let's look at this guy who burned the Quran. So courts reviving blasphemy laws after convicting a man who burned the Quran. So this is the guy who did it. And let's see, British courts have been accused of reviving blasphemy laws after a man who set fire to a copy of the Quran was convicted of a racially aggravated public order offense. Hamit Coskun shouted, "F Islam," and Islam is a religion of terrorism, while holding the religious text above his head. The 50-year-old, who was violently attacked by a passerby during the demonstration in London, went on trial last week, accused of an offense under the Public Order Act. At Westminster's Magistrates Court on Monday, he was found guilty of a religiously aggravated public order offense of using disorderly conduct, which was motivated in part by hostility towards members of a religious group, namely followers of Islam. Well, obviously, it's like namely followers of Islam, but it was just completely Islam. So, I mean, just this, right? Religiously aggravated public order offense. I mean, we have all these terms in the UK that are sounding more and more dystopian, like non-crime hate incidents, which are not a crime, but can still have your name on some list by the police because you said something offensive. And, personally, I would not go onto the street and burn a book. I wouldn't go onto the street and burn any book because people would probably think I'm completely insane, and I wouldn't want to cause a fire. I think that would be my main thing. I wouldn't want some fire to get out of control. I mean, I thought that you would, maybe it's not illegal, but are you allowed to just burn things on the street? Because I think if there's any argument against this from the perspective of law, it should be that. It should be, you can't just burn items on the street. It's a fire hazard, right? So I think that would have been a good enough argument. But to make it about the religion, and yes, it was him expressing himself freely about his views on Islam, of which are very strong. I think he said Islam is the religion of terrorism. He has views. I think I read that he associates Islam with pedophilia, and I don't think this should be illegal. I think it's distasteful. I wouldn't do it. I don't think in a civilized society we should be doing this. I think if he has problems with Islam, there are other ways that he can, raise that in a more civilized manner. And one thing I'm going to say, which you guys might find controversial, because I said this and people didn't like it, but he's an immigrant, right? A recent immigrant. And I think he might be a refugee from like Turkey or something. But fact check me on that. I I don't think you should be able to migrate to a country and then start protesting against the government. Now, maybe my opinion there is naive and I'm not thinking about it deeply enough. And to do that would mean there are more dire consequences. But if a country has welcomed you in, then I don't feel until you gain citizenship, you should be able to then go out and protest and say, I'm not happy with what you're doing. Because in my view, if you don't like the government of that country, go to another country where you do like the government. So in any regard, whether this is about Islam or anything, you could be a right-wing person, a left-wing person. I wouldn't move to Spain and then just start protesting for communism or to like lower migration or whatever, because it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, don't live there if that's the case. But maybe I'm being naive. So this is what the story is really about, right? Muslim who attacked Quran burner spared jail. So this is the guy looking very lovely and peaceful in this photo. So Moussa Kadri threatened to kill Hamit Coskun with a bread knife at protest outside the Turkish consulate. So a man has avoided jail after violently attacking a protester who was burning a Quran outside the Turkish consulate. Hamit Coskun, 51, shouted, F Islam. Yeah, we talked about that already. And I think I forgot to show, oh yeah. So I don't think YouTube will let me show this, but I'm glad that this video is censored. But you can see this man has come out of the blue, just come out of the bushes, out of nowhere. There's the guy burning the book. And then just this Islamist is just there. So, I mean, of anything, this is what worries me. He didn't go to a mosque. He didn't go to an Islamic area. He went to the Turkish consulate. And there just happens to be a radical Muslim with a knife there. It's like, what are the chances? And if that is the case, then my assumption would be either this is highly coincidental or there are far more people following this faith, not all of them, especially men, who would feel emboldened enough to do this because he just happened to be walking by. What are the odds? So this guy is 59 from Kensington. I mean, that's questionable. Is he from there? Emerged from a residential building. And I mean, Kensington's a really nice area. So he's got it better than me, I have to say. He told the protester, I'm going to kill you, before slashing at him with a bread knife. I mean, it's pretty pathetic that he brought out a bread knife. It's like, really? But at least the guy wasn't fatally injured. So he was only handed a 20-week prison sentence suspended for attacking a man with a knife and telling him he was going to kill it. Now, this is the same country where Lucy Connolly posted about burning down the migrant hotels for all I care. A disgusting post, a stupid post for a grown-up, and was sentenced to 31 months in prison. This is the same country where Graham Linehan was arrested at Heathrow Airport by 5 armed police officers because of his tweets about trans, his offensive tweets towards trans people. Graham Linehan, who is an Irish citizen living in America. So our government, our police force, are happy to arrest non-UK citizens living in another country for tweets when they arrive at the airport. Just going to say. So this is the same country, right? The judge said the way Kadri lost his temper was disgraceful, adding, use of blades is a curse in our community. Well, yeah. You think? Use of blades is a curse on our community. No shit. I thought it was, I thought it was lovely, personally. Obviously not. So this gets more ridiculous, right? So this is the sentencing remarks. So I'm not going to read through all of this, but, he said, you were clearly deeply offended by a man who was protesting outside the consulate. It's like, are you trying to justify this? You were heard issuing threats to him, calling him an effing idiot, telling him you were going to kill him. You then returned inside your property, right? What happens next was graphically recorded on CCTV, and it showed To any passing member of the public, that you came out with a knife, you slashed towards the man. When he went to the ground, you kicked him a number of times and spat at him. So this is like a really disgusting crime. While I accept the blade in question may not have been the same league as, say, a sharpened kitchen knife, it was pointed and it could have caused serious injury. So that appears to be a mitigating circumstance. And this is the part which is really chilling, right? So he says, I note, however, that you are now 59 and someone of hitherto exemplary character. I mean, I have pretty good friends, right? And an exemplary boyfriend. Like my friends have good character. Now, none of them would see a rando on the street burning a book, run into their house, take out a knife, and tell them they're going to kill them, and then proceed to attack them. So I am skeptical, to say the least, of his exemplary character. And he says those who know you speak extremely highly of you and observe that this behavior is totally out of character. Well, of course, you get your local imam or your Muslim wife or whoever to write a letter saying, oh, he's of good character. That's something you can do when you get arrested, is get like your employer or a friend or someone, from like your doctor or whatever to write a letter about you saying, this person's actually great. They just fell on hard times. And I get it, but it's just obviously going to be biased, right? You're hardly going to ask someone and they'll say, yeah, he's actually a really terrible person. He's abusive. He's unhinged. He's a narcissist. That's just not going to happen. So he said, those observations demonstrate what a tragedy it is that a man of your previous good character should find that because of your actions, you are before the Crown Court for the first time in your life. I note also the good works that you do, especially your work with charities. I'd like to know which charities those are. Are they, of self-interest? And therefore, he just gave him a suspended sentence. So I just think, fair enough if we were living in an equal society and it wasn't two-tier Britain. But just to see people go to jail for social media posts who have kids, who've never done anything violent in person in their life, who deleted the tweet after an hour and deeply regretted it. To see the police turn up on people's doorsteps about trans, and then this, it's like they know exactly what to do to just make people angrier and angrier. So this is Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Secretary, and he wrote to the Director of Public Prosecutions. So he talked about, I'm not going to understand this really. So the Criminal Justice Act 1988, threatening with a bladed article, Offences Against a Person Act 1861, threats to kill. So were they considered and rejected, and if so, on what evidential basis? So it appears he wasn't charged or he wasn't convicted on these laws, but was no religiously aggravated count added given the stated motive. So that's interesting, right? Because one guy got a religiously motivated attack because of the Quran burning. So he was convicted for that. But then the guy who attacks him, because he's offended about his religion, does not get a religiously motivated attack. So it's fine if you're defending a religion. I can go out and like chop people up because of they don't agree with Scientology. That's a joke. I'm not actually saying I'm going to do that. And then that is not a religiously aggravated attack. But if someone were to burn a Scientology book, then it might be. But I'm guessing that what we're seeing here, I'm going to be cynical, but I'm guessing this wouldn't happen if this was a Bible. And it probably wouldn't happen because the guy would have burned it and just everyone would have looked at him and said, like, you're crazy, you're weird, but we're not going to attack you. And then he would have just gone on his way. So, Connie Shaw posted this tweet about it. We've already talked about all the stuff. It got 1.7 million views, 23,000 likes. And it's just what goes through these judges' minds is what I want to say. And this is not the first time this has happened. So, man arrested after live video of Quran burning being burned in Manchester. This was in February. Here's another guy who decided to burn the Quran in Manchester city centre. He streamed it on X, and He was seen standing by the Glade of Light, the memorial to those killed in the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing. So that was at an Ariana Grande concert. And yeah, it was at an Ariana Grande concert by an Islamist suicide bomber who killed, I think, 15 kids or something, or maybe it's more than that, but injured a lot of people too. He was then filmed as he set light to the pages of the Islamic holy book. A man could be seen approaching him and trying to grab the book out of his hand. So again, there just happened to be a Muslim around who was like, no. But he had been arrested on suspicion of racially aggravated public order offense. He is currently in custody for questioning. So I don't really know what's become of this, but in any regard, racially aggravated public order offense, you know, Islam is not a race, okay? You can fully disagree with burning the Quran and say it's disgusting, it's targeting Muslims, it is, if you want to use Islamophobic, even though I don't subscribe to that word, but it's not a race. You know, if I really wanted to, I could convert to Islam and go around to my local mosque. It wouldn't be racist. So it's just also the incompetence of these charges. It's like they're just not thinking deeply into it. They just think, oh, Muslim equals brown person. So therefore, if you offend said brown person, it's a racially aggravated order offense. And I just think it's undeniable all of this is happening because people are so scared of upsetting, you know, Islamists in the UK. And not all Muslims are Islamists, but we have a hell of a lot of them. We have 40,000 Muslim men on the terror watch list in this country. And we've had, you know, terror attacks on the reg every couple of years, and they're not coming from Christians. And then this is one that happened in Sweden. So Quran burner assassinated in Sweden. So I scroll down, Iraqi refugee Salwan Mamika, known for his well-publicized and controversial public Quran burnings, was assassinated on January 29th in Sweden. The Prime Minister said there's obviously a risk that there is also a deep link to foreign power. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that, but you can see that this first guy, he is from Turkey, I think, which is a majority Muslim country. And then this guy was from Iraq. So people forget that these majority Muslim countries, at least some of them used to have a high number of Christians, like Lebanon and Syria and stuff, and they're being persecuted, or they have been persecuted. And a lot of people of refugee status in those places obviously have a hatred of Islam, and you can't really blame them, I guess, when they see what happened. So that's about the Quran burning. Let me know what you guys thought. Do you think it should be illegal to burn the Quran? Do you think it's distasteful to do it? And what do you think of the, you know, the two convictions meted out to those two guys?